And I called my dad up. I said, Dad, you got to help me out. We're losing this club. What are we going to do? My dad is in the office and he looks at me and he goes, just work a little harder. And that's the mantra we've lived by through 100 clubs and 40 years in the fitness industry. We just work a little harder. But here's the key. And we found this out in the mental health field for sure. The thing that fills the gap between the known and the unknown is fear, if you let it.
This is All Things Fitness and Wellness, hosted by Chrissy Van. Together, we're uniting industry thought leaders and fitfluencers on the mission to inspire innovation and encourage people to live a life fit and well. Brought to you by the Personal Training Institute. Learn how to train, gain, and retain clients. Visit bcpti.ca. On today's episode, we welcome Victor and Lynne Brick of the John W. Brick Foundation. I had the opportunity to hear them speak at this year's Fitness Technology Summit. Not only was I deeply moved by their personal motivations to amplify the importance of mental health, but I greatly enjoyed them taking several hundred fitness executives out of their comfort zone to embrace some laughter therapy. In this episode, you'll learn about the Brick's humble stumble into the fitness industry that has since translated to co-founding Brick Bodies, a chain of health clubs in the Baltimore area, and becoming one of the largest franchisees of low-cost gym brand Planet Fitness. Amongst their tremendous success, they'll share how some deeply personal trials pushed them to answer their calling to give back with a mission to change how the world treats mental health. Before we get to this important conversation, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes every Wednesday featuring industry thought leaders and influencers. Plus, every other Monday, we have an episode of Exercise Snacks Bite-Size Science, where we explore the latest science and research directly with the scientists and researchers themselves. I'm your host, Chrissy Van, and this is ATFW. Victor and Lynne Brick, you're no strangers to those in the fitness industry, but how did you get started in the first place?
So I was doing all kinds of odd jobs. And at the end of the school year, everything ended, teaching ended, basketball ended, a whole bit. So I needed extra income. I was teaching a phys ed in a community college. And I saw an ad for an aerobics instructor, and I thought they wanted aerobics like Kenneth Cooper aerobics, jogging, running, swimming. I showed up. It was a bunch of women in leotards that wanted a Jane Fonda aerobic class. And it was in a racquetball court. And I had no music, so I ran out to the car. I got a cassette tape, Simon and Garfunkel's Are You Going to Scarborough Fair?
Great choice.
I did the whole course, the whole class to that one tape. And I realized they were going to fire me. But heck, my wife was a dancer. She was a dance minor in college. And she was only working half days. She would work 12 midnight to 12 noon. I'd let her sleep 4 hours. I'd wake her up. She'd go up and she'd teach these classes. And we started by working for this club where Lynn was just an instructor, but she built these classes up to so many people that we started renting racquetball court space around Baltimore. And I'm telling you, Chrissy, no joke, we had $300 or $400 cash money at the end of every month. I mean, it didn't get any better than that. And that's how we initially got into the fitness industry.
My favorite thing about you sharing that story is that I can tell that same spark that obviously happened inside of both of you at that time is still there. That little seed that was planted like, hey, this is actually something that we're meant to do. So how do you go from stumbling into accidentally teaching an aerobics class with your Simon and Garfunkel tape to all of a sudden owning gym spaces and expanding in this massive way over the decades?
Well, over the years, especially in the beginning, Victor would watch me teach my class, and he said, you put together movements in a very sequential pattern. So why don't you create something that is really used in the phys ed world, the part to whole method of instruction. If anyone wants to learn a new skill, like for example, playing tennis, first you start with the grip, and then you start with your footwork and blah, 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 and then you work your way up to build a complete sequence. So that's what we did with, would do with movement. And then I started taking that concept on the road. And then I thought, well, I can't be the only person teaching all these classes. Then I started teaching teachers how to teach. And that's how we started. With videos, with seminars and workshops and speaking engagements at different conventions. And and then traveling around the world to teach the instructors.
So that's how I got to be Mr. Lynne Brick, because she
There
was
you go.
and I was just carrying her bags. But this feeble little mind always knew this was not sustainable. We just couldn't have these classes and us run around the world really making a couple of $1,000s on a weekend and thinking we had a business. So we decided. Then Lynn went and got pregnant. I don't know what happened. So she gets pregnant. So now
With the second child.
With the second child. So now necessity is the mother of invention. We have no business without Lynn. I am not going to teach classes at Scarborough Fair for hundreds of women. Are you going to?
No matter how well the leotard did, eh?
So I realized we had a choice. We could follow our dream and go with this thing that had bit us like nothing else, or we could go back to recreation director, nurse, maternity leave, nice little income. And we obviously decided to follow our passion. But if we were going to follow our passion, again, it had to be sustainable. Well, back then, 1985, what was the only real way to be into the fitness industry full time, unless you were going to work for somebody? And that was to own a club. So we needed money to buy a club. There was this tiny little club in Baltimore County, outside of Baltimore, that was for sale. We needed money. When you really need money and you're young, who do you always go to? When you're a young kid and you need money, who do you go to? Mom and Dad. Mom and Dad, they gave us the money. We bought the club. We almost went out of business the first month. I tried to give the club back to the guy I bought it from, but when I called him and said, "Clark, will you take the club back?" He goes, "Victor, I'll take the club back, but I thought you had more guts than that." And you talk about a punch in the stomach. And it was from that moment, that very phone call, as you can tell, I remember to this day, that we went from impossibility thinkers to possibility thinkers, and we started opening clubs. And then we were pushing our Brick Bodies clubs, and we got them up to 7 clubs, and it was a nice local business, but we realized it was very capital intensive and management intensive. So we were always, again, that word sustainable. We were always looking for a bigger, faster, better, whatever, something that was sustainable and could still let us have the lifestyle that we chose with our kids. And that's how we came across Planet Fitness. So we still have some Brick Bodies clubs, but we've cut that organization down to the most profitable. And the growth over the last 15 years, we've gone from 7 Brick Bodies clubs to 100 Planets and 3 Brick Bodies. So it's been pretty good growth.
In the very beginning, neither of us had any business experience at all. So we learned through the school of hard knocks, literally. And then with meeting with other industry peers and mentors and people that helped to guide us in the very beginning, and to this day still do, which has been one of our secret sauces.
You don't have enough time for us to thank everybody that's helped us along the way. But Joe Cerulli says it best. Success comes from good judgment. Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. Suffice it to say, I've got a lot of experience.
Hey, it's worked out in your favor. And I think one of the most powerful things that you said in there was that impossibility to possibility mindset. And even because oftentimes I find when we're in the thick of those moments, your brain can pull you in 2 directions. It can either continue to pull you down, and it would have been very easy to go in that other direction and say, hey, we tried. We've made this mistake. It's overwhelming. Everything's starting to. So how did you make that mindset shift? I mean, I know that you mentioned there reaching out to mentors, but do you look back and can you recall how you were able to make that shift? Because it's not easy when you are trying to make a business run and you have that fear of failure and imposter syndrome, and simultaneously you have a growing family at the same time. There's some realities there.
Keep in mind, I tried to give the club back. I really did. I just didn't think about it. Clark McKenzie punched me in the stomach. And what he said to me, not directly and not intentionally, but what he said to me was, tough times don't build character, they reveal it. And I realized I'm no baby. I'm a lot tougher. Lynn and I are a lot tougher than we realize. And I called my dad up. I said, Dad, you got to help me out. We're losing this club. What are we going to do? My dad is in the office and he looks at me and he goes, just work a little harder. And that's the mantra we've lived by through 100 clubs and 40 years in the fitness industry. We just work a little harder. But here's the key. And we found this out in the mental health field for sure. The thing that fills the gap between the known and the unknown is fear, if you let it. And fear filled that gap for me when I tried to get that club back to Clark. But he said, no way, Jose, you're not a chump. And so I changed fear to a plan. And we started employing self-help techniques that we didn't even realize were self-help techniques. It was just out of desperation. And today, some of those techniques are pillars of treatment of mental well-being. They're pillars of our mental well-being and how people handle stress. I mean, things like writing down your thoughts and getting stuff out of your head before you go to sleep, and just all kinds of breathing exercises and maintaining your exercise and eating, all those things. So that's how we did it. We filled that gap with a plan. And here's the thing, you're talking about possibility thinkers and impossibility thinkers. It's easy to become a possibility thinker. You know what's the hard part? Implementing your plan. How many people you know said they were going to write a book, start their own business, leave their job, do all kinds of things, and they don't do it? The difference was, out of necessity, we did it, but we had it in us. And for some people, it's not in their chemical makeup, their nature, to assume the risk of running their own business. It is a very stressful lifestyle, and you have to really have that certain constitution where you can put it behind you and enjoy life, and it's not always there.
No, it's so true. And I think you point on something so true about us as humans innately. Everyone always thinks that motivation is something we're waiting for to jump on to make it happen, but really it's the doing that creates the motivation to keep on doing. And I think the pair of you, obviously kismet, and had that inertia together to power through. And especially when you do get a nudge that is a gut punch, the thing that's nice is you were seen in that moment. They saw you and knew the potential that was there underneath, where sometimes we have those moments that we have to have an external force that reminds us of who we are, what we're capable of. I mean, being a human being is wild. Look at these little avatars, as I almost like to call it, that we live in. It's a very incredible experience on so many levels. But I know the two of you created this incredible success through that hard work. However, that's not where you stopped. And I think when it comes to passion and purpose, another really important component is, how are we giving back to the world, and what can be our impact? And I know it's through your personal experiences that you really aligned with something. So in 2015, you launched the John W. Brick Foundation. What was the catalyst to bring that to life?
Well, the catalyst of the John W. Brick Foundation was my oldest brother, John, who suffered from schizophrenia his entire life. And in all the years of treatment, sometimes in the best hospitals and institutions available, never once was he put on this fully integrated, holistic approach that included such things as exercise, nutrition, and mind-body practices, along with the big three. You know what the big three are in the medical profession for psychiatric treatment? The big three: medication, psychoanalysis, and institutionalization. That's it. That's all they've got. Some people integrate holistic lifestyles, but I'm talking about, generally speaking, the large institutions: medication, psychoanalysis, institutionalization. We saw that with John. We saw how destructive it was. He died from the complications of schizophrenia, but not from schizophrenia itself. That's not a terminal disease. We firmly believe the medication wore his body out. He was never put on that holistic program, that holistic approach. The more we got into fitness, the more we realized there had to be a better way, and that fitness is not the answer. It's part of the treatment. We look at it as integrated, not alternative. And too many people think binary. It's all or nothing, all movement, no medication, or all medication, hospitalization. No, it's, my brother needed medication for sure, but his treatment could have been dramatically improved with an integrated program.
I sympathize on a very personal level because we're going through a similar situation with my brother-in-law currently. And it's exactly that. Like, no one, if you've not experienced it and been able to witness a lot of what those medications do when it comes to complications and side effects, it's so difficult to watch a human being kind of get lost in the system. And even being based in Canada, generally we're people that champion our healthcare system, but seeing somebody have to move through the steps post pandemic as well. And even still in 2024, exactly what you're speaking to, it's not the only answer, doing fitness, nutrition, and finding these well being practices, but it certainly should be part of the wheelhouse. And we're still not there yet. So I'm appreciative to organizations like yours that are championing this message. And on top of it, facilitating a lot of the research in the space, one that I think is helping educate the populace on the power of what movement can do, on what these modalities can do. So tell me a little bit about some of the findings. I know in 2022, I believe, was the last Move Your Mental Health report. So what were some of the most notable takeaways out of that?
Well, first of all, the Move Your Mental Health report can be found on the johnwbrickfoundation.org website as one of our drop-down menus for resources. And that is a compilation of 30 years worth of over 1,400 research articles. And the compelling findings are that in the executive summary, that movement is really critical. One exercise bout at a moderate to high intensity is the equivalent to an entry-level dose of Zoloft. So it's just compelling. And there's more and more research that's being published now as well that's following the same similar pattern. So this is something that is really important for people to understand. In the executive summary, which consists of 10 or 11 pages versus over 100 pages of the entire report, we have also found, and we summarize that for depressive symptoms, moderate to high intensity cardiovascular exercise is best. And for anxiety symptoms of anxiety, what has been research has shown is that more of a mind-body practice or slowing down, which is counterintuitive sometimes to what we think. Sometimes we think that, oh gosh, people are having a hard time with anxiety, that they need to move more. But maybe perhaps, no, deep breathing, meditation, Tai Chi, Qigong, those types of restorative activities is what the executive summary clearly states is very beneficial to those suffering from anxiety. And for depressive symptoms, like I said, the moderate to high intensity is best. And also a combination of cardiovascular and strength training at that moderate to high intensity is also best too. It's the combination of all these things specific to a person's individual needs.
And one of the keys there is moderate to intense. Moderate to intense for each individual is dramatically different. A fast walk is moderate to intense for some people. But the point is, many people do not get themselves in the positive stress. And positive stress, think of the typical bell-shaped curve. And everybody says stress is a killer and stress is bad. Nothing can be further from the truth. You need stress. Every baby needs to be stressed in order to walk. You need to be stressed in order to play an instrument better. You need to be stressed in order to become a better athlete. Stress is important for improvement. However, too little stress, no improvement. Too much stress, burnout, frustration, fatigue, anger, and that can happen at the highest levels. The greatest gymnast in the world, Simone Biles, suffered from what? Too much stress. What did you get? Burnout. The ideal is that positive stress, you get the right amount of stress, you'll get the best result. And some people overdo it and then they don't get results, or they underdo it and don't get results.
So specifically, this bell curve that Victor's referring to is called the Yerkes-Dodson law of positive stress.
Correct. And again, it's on the website. And what another thing the findings found is that, what was it, Lynn? 3 45-minute?
Yes.
What was that?
3 30 to 45-minute bouts per week are most beneficial as well. So it's the combination, as I mentioned, cardio and strength together. But here's the problem. Here's the issue. It's not just what people like to do. It's being consistent with their movement pattern and their daily movement activities. So it's that the consistency really is the key.
Right. And so the final word on what exercise should they do, what is best, whatever they'll do. Mm-hmm. Better to do something for a year than the perfect program for 6 weeks, which is what too many people do New Year's resolutions, correct?
Because 1,000%.
They like doing it. Something they like doing might be walking their dog. And so how do they get in positive stress? Walking their dog, just walk a little faster, jog with the dog. We used to run with our dog. You too many people let the dog walk you instead of you walking the dog.
I've got one of those.
So you find something that you like doing and stick to it.
Well, and I think you bring up such an excellent point there. And I think what's been so refreshing in the fitness industry is that they are now really working to get this message out. Like, even when you look at the advertisements that we just saw heading into the new year, it's a lot less of lose 30 in 30 days, which, I mean, that's not a goal or motivator for anybody anyways. It's not about getting shredded abs. A lot of the narratives and even these advertising campaigns have more pointed to this essence of well-being, because this is the tool we need in our toolkit. I find most people argue, if it's not part of their consistent lifestyle, oh, I don't have time for this. And I really think that it's the matter that we need to prioritize time and space for this. And there are ways we can integrate it in your lives. How is it for you two personally? Because I know, like, this is an ideal example. We heard how many businesses you have grown and brought to life. Plus, you have this foundation. Plus, I'm sure you have many other obligations in your speaker circuit. So how do you two prioritize your well-being? Because obviously you live and breathe what you preach.
Well, first and foremost, we schedule it just like we would an important meeting. We purposely put it into our schedule. And we do things such as I've mentioned in the past for different podcasts, is all walking and walking on the beach and doing restorative activities where we can just pause, slow down the pace, and focus on breath work, focus on being present, and focus on enjoying Mother Nature at her best.
You really need to have a rhythm and a routine. And in your rhythm and your routine, it's just like I was a track guy. And with track, you had heavy workouts, medium workouts, and light workouts. Nobody did heavy workouts every day. Nobody did medium. Nobody did light if you wanted to get any improvement. So you should have your heavy days, medium days, and light days. Your light days might be the all walking on the beach, but you can get something out of that, not just mentally, but physically. All walking, forest bathing, there's a lot of things you do. So you plan your work and work your plan, basically, and it's got to be in your calendar. For any of you that have elderly parents, if you don't schedule to go see them, you don't see them. And you feel really bad because life got in the way. But if it's in there, you work around it. So your workouts need to be in there, and they should be at a regular time. We do things like in the morning before we get out of bed, we have a stretching routine that takes 5 minutes. We do our breathing in bed for 5 minutes. So when we get out of bed, we've already done something positive for ourselves. We both do, as you get older, and we're getting older, believe it or not, you start losing flexibility in your ankles and your feet. And so we do stretching exercises for our feet. We got these little balls. You might have seen them, half rubber balls with the spikes.
Yeah.
While we're brushing our teeth.
Right.
We're incorporating all these things because you have to maximize your time. Multitasking is not always the best thing. And at times, you don't want to be multitasking when you're trying to help your kid with his homework or trying to be at a kid's sporting event. But when you're doing something as routine as brushing your teeth, you can be doing something else that helps you a little bit, just a little bit, but every day. So the important thing is to have on a regular basis at least 30 to 45 minutes a day, and know weeks in advance what you're doing. You see the guys in the gym, they have all those things. And the other thing is that your program should be developed in such a way, like for me, it used to be everybody in the fitness industry worked out for two main reasons: get bigger, get smaller. That's not true anymore. Most people are working out for either physical well-being or mental well-being. Mm-hmm. So for me, again, as I'm aging, cardiovascular becomes more important than strength. So the first thing I'm getting into my workout every day, no matter what, is a half hour of cardio. If that's all I've got, it's a win. I've done my cardio. Most people can cram in a half hour. If I have another half hour, then I get in my strength and my stretching. But the first half hour is a cardio because that's the centerpiece of my training at the moment.
And to add on to that, what I'm hearing you say is also incorporating simple movements into your routine activities anyway. Like, for example, if you're vacuuming your living room rug, do some lunges. When you're loading your dishwasher, do some squats. When you're brushing your teeth, focus on balance training. So there's all kinds of ways that you can incorporate into your normal activities of daily living.
And then the other thing, of course, going along with the JW is make sure every day you do some form of mental well-being exercise, even if it's nothing more than 5 minutes of box breathing, even if it's nothing more than journaling, even if it's nothing more than 10-minute total body stretch, lying flat on a mat and not even moving, just lying there and feeling how good it feels to just totally, it's called Shavasana, which I got dead man's pose down. I'm telling you.
That's your favorite pose, isn't
My
it?
favorite pose. But the funny thing is, and you probably take yoga, Christy, because it looked like you do a lot of stuff. Any yogi will tell you one of the hardest things to do is dead man's pose because people.
I was just going to say, yes, I had so much trouble integrating a yoga practice. I was a lifter, etc., and I like made my mantra flexibility of body and mind, and by far that was the most difficult, to become an observer of thoughts, let them move past.
Right.
And somebody said it to me so well. They're like, if you never have given your brain an opportunity to speak in regards to like sitting back and being the listener, of course everybody's going to try and talk at once.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Very good point.
I think it's just so refreshing to hear from two professionals. And obviously we speak to so many professionals in the industry, and I know people practice what they preach, but it is so easy, especially if you're running a business, etc. And you feel like you get up, as you talked about, you wake up in the morning and you have that mindful moment. Most people get up in the morning and they grab their phone, and that's where the distractions begin. And your brain almost starts to crave that essence of distraction. So I really appreciate you sharing a bit about your routine there.
And I will tell you, if you just do that 10-minute breathing and stretching before you get out of bed, one, you think you've done something, and two, it'll be amazing how much more energy you'll have when you get out of bed, and you'll just feel centered. And when you miss it, I don't know about you, but like I said, it's obvious you work out a lot. I'm sure when you don't do it, you are off.
Yep.
You'll get to be where you're at your best when you do that. So you're more efficient, you get more done, you enjoy life better. So it's not in addition to, it's to make everything better.
Right.
Yeah, it's a partnership in life. Yeah. You're providing so many resources to people through the John W. Brick Foundation, but obviously because of your tremendous success in this industry, and I know your involvement with different organizations, you do have a voice and you do have a platform. What would be your hopes that these resources that you're creating be used for when it comes to shaping public policy, especially how we look at mental health and mental illness?
Well, we hope that many people, many industries embrace the things that we embrace as well, and believe what we believe, and understand the resources such as the dual continuum, for example, that's on the John W. Brick Foundation, which includes a pathogenic or illness wellness horizontal continuum, and then the vertical continuum, which is more salutogenic or self-care oriented. And this is where most of us, not only in the fitness industry, but many other industries, can really focus on helping not only themselves, but the people that they care for.
If we are to be taken seriously as an integral part of the healthcare delivery system, we must get everybody, both in the fitness industry and in the medical community, familiar with and in agreement with the dual continuum. And the dual continuum, there's always a medical component with mental well-being, mental health. However, most people are not clinically mentally ill. Even people that commit suicide, a lot of time it's life events that have driven them to that point. And if these people are constantly doing the right self-care programs, they're more resilient to be able to handle life events. Now, sometimes, no matter what, as I said, you have to rely on the treatments in the medical profession. But that's where this integrative approach comes into. We want the healthcare and the self-care communities to understand they're like yin and yang. And there's some healthcare with self-care and some healthcare with self-care.
Self-care with
self-care with healthcare. but their interplay and they work together. It's not either or. There's too much of that binary. So they want to understand the yin and yang concept and the dual continuum, because even a person that has a pathogenic mental health condition can flourish under the right set of circumstances. He has a good partner, he has a steady job, he has a good support system, he has a hobby that he likes, as opposed to somebody that has no clinical mental health issue. They don't have a history of it. It's not physiological part of their makeup, but they've lost their job, they've lost their partner, their kids, they aren't speaking to their kids, they're in debt, they're just all of these. That person can be languishing, and the person with the mental health condition. There's plenty of people that can have Abraham Lincoln that have clinical depression. Abraham Lincoln had clinical depression, and look what he accomplished. And he was able to manage that. So it's this combination of healthcare and self-care working together to manage.
And to answer your question specifically about policy and advocacy, what we can do in each of our industries is to educate those that make those important decisions for our industries.
When we explain to politicians, and we do a lot with politicians, and that was one of the reasons FitTech was in DC, it was to visit the Hill. When we explained to the congressman about the self-care healthcare model and how they work together, they're all nodding their heads, because they read that. What a stressful job being a politician, and most of them are committed to their health and well-being. They have to be, and they understand it. We got more people understanding it, more policymakers.
Well, and I think you speak to something when you talk about that intersection as well. Oftentimes I find, and this is changing, but people would seek out, if they weren't feeling of sound body and mind because of one of those unexpected circumstances, you lose your job, then all of a sudden you're scrambling to find the tools, like what can help me feel better? Whereas really we should be integrating these practices within our lives regularly, as you spoke, building those habits day by day, because when we do face those adversities, and they will come, most of the things we stress about in life are not the things that actually knock the wind out of our sails. The things that knock the wind are generally the unexpected, out of nowhere moments, but you have so many more tools and resources to actually move through that. And I know that you're amplifying this to a lot of industries, but of course the fitness industry, being where you've spent decades, is really where you're focusing. So the mental well-being certification for fitness professionals, I know this was something that was announced through last year. So explain to people what that is and where the grassroots of putting that together came from.
Well, we've always been very focused on scientific evidence-based research, and that is the basic foundation of the John W. Brick Mental Health Foundation. But the intention was to provide tools based on this scientific evidence-based research for fitness professionals. And that we're not just talking about Group X instructors and personal trainers, but managers and people working at the service desk and childcare, and anyone that's serving other people in their clubs, in the entire, or their studios in the industry, to have the tools to help other people. And it's not intended to be a recognition of an urgent or crisis situation. It's focusing on prevention. Prevention really is the key to not only longevity, but also to help build that resilience we just talked about, and being consistent with it. So having the trainer and the Group X instructors really talk about these things, and then make sure that there is a compelling understanding of how to integrate these tools into their treatment plans or their prescriptive plans. And of course, this is also collaborative, focusing on what each client or member wants to do or likes to do. So it's very collaborative, but yet very effective.
And it's not just the programs and exercises. It's something as simple as how to talk to someone that is obviously struggling with mental well-being. Something as simple as, Chrissy, how are you doing? And you say, great. And I go, no, Chrissy, really? How are you really doing? Because you can tell they're not doing great.
Oh, we mask it we think we mask it well as human beings, but I think especially if you're sharing space with someone, you can innately know with the energy when it's off.
Right.
Correct.
And there's just so much in the certification above and beyond the practical application of movement
Nutrition.
and their programs. So what are some of the other
So some of the other modules
modules
that we have
10 modules, I think.
Correct. And some of the other modules include not just movement and how that is beneficial, but also nutrition, what we eat and what helps the body also helps the brain and our mental well-being. Also mindfulness and meditation and how that is effective. In addition to what Victor just mentioned, coaching and communication skills.
Coaching and communication. You know, if you're not coached and you know what you're doing, you could make it worse with anything, especially well-being.
Overcoming stigma and biases. That's really critical in today's world, as well as ethics and collaboration, knowing when to refer out,
right,
as well as all the other resources that we have that are available that many people may not be aware of.
So we want everybody to know we're not training psychologists and psychiatrists. We're educating fitness professionals on how to help people basically build up their resilience. It's really the best way of looking at it. And when you think about it, when you're trained physically, you're building up resilience for colds, for flus, for health. And then there's the mental well-being perspective, which has never been addressed before, even though it's always been there. It's never been addressed before, and it's never been approached in a scientific method. It's just kind of like, well, it makes me feel better.
To your point, I mean, exactly that, it has always been there, but I think this is where there's so much value in driving the point home and elevating the message. Because even you spoke about box breathing earlier. You know, I live in Vancouver and we've always been quite a wellness focused area of Canada, especially compared to where I grew up, where we had the highest obesity rates per capita, a very sedentary city. So it was a huge shift when I came out here. But when you talk of breath work, now, I mean, the sober curious movement is enhancing. So a lot of people are giving up drinking. And we've had a lot of areas that instead on a Friday night, they're actually doing late night socials where you get together and do breath work exercises together. And that's now such an accepted practice where I feel like even a couple of years ago, people would be like, you've gone to go and do what? You went and got together with a bunch of people to go breathe in a room? What is that all about? And so the stigmas can be smashed, but it does take time for people to kind of step out and be like, hey, this is actually an advantage. So as you look forward, when we do have more fitness professionals that are more educated in these resources, what is your hope when it comes to how we are viewed as an industry when it comes to, I mean, everybody knows that personal training, etc., gym spaces help with physical health. But what is your hope when we look, at a Planet Fitness, at a Brick gym? What do you hope people see?
Where our hope is that we are essential. We're an essential component to this mental health crisis that's become the longer tail of the pandemic. And that it's not just something that's based on post-pandemic, but it's sustainable for all time. We know that there's been a mental health crisis, but what many people may not realize or understand that we're in the beginning of a mental health renaissance. So we hope that this is a sustainable renaissance that completely shifts and changes how we are viewed as an industry, especially the fitness industry, and that we're essential as part of the solution.
Keep in mind that the program is an educational program. Our main focus was to help people understand their own bodies. There are too many people that advocate their health and well-being, whether it be physical or mental, to somebody else, usually in the medical community. There are so many people that go in, get a diagnosis, have a major operation, and never consider all the things they could have done once they got the diagnosis, all the things they could have done to see if that surgery was necessary. And sometimes that surgery will change their life for the worse forever. We want people to take control of their mental health and well-being along with their physical health and well-being, which is what fitness industry has been trying to do forever. So that's really what we hope, is that the individual whether it be the fitness professional or whether it be the member, is exposed to all these options besides, as I said, the big three.
How can people access the certification? How can they get involved? Because I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that are like, yes, I would love to learn more about this.
Before Lynn gives that information, I want to make sure everybody understands the reason we did this certification was not for the fitness professional, just for the fitness professional to be able to be better qualified to work with their members. It's for the members. It's for that fitness professional, whoever he or she might be. It's for his or her loved ones and her entire support system. There will be some time when everybody on this podcast and anybody that listens to this podcast and everybody in the fitness industry will need to employ some of those techniques and maybe all of them, and nobody knows better than us. 2 years ago, our daughter was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Our daughter was a major college basketball player and tennis player and played professional basketball overseas, and she has cancer at the age of 40. And it came out of nowhere. And one of the things that's helped us get by is employing all of these activities, these practices for our mental well-being. At the same time, with her care, we just didn't rely on traditional medicine. We have a functional medicine. We have a herbologist. We have MD Anderson, which is traditional world class, and we have a team, and we're utilizing every advantage we can to fight this thing. And so far, we're doing a pretty good job of it. So the point is, one, you never know when you will need to employ these techniques, and two, the time to employ them is before you need them.
Well, and before you share where to find it, because I just want to speak to that. First of all, thank you for sharing that. I think you nail it completely. There's no one that is immune from life. I remember it not being that many years ago where, yes, we have a mental health day every year and we have a mental health month every year, but there still was such a stigma and people sitting in the shadows with their pain. And I know that there are still many people that still feel confined by that. And that's why, just because the momentum has really started to take hold of this message going out, it's not time to stop. It's time to amplify and gather. And for those that understand it, to share that knowledge. And that's exactly what this can help accomplish. So how can people take part in this certification?
Yeah, thank you, Chrissy, and very well said, by the way. So through the JohnWBrickFoundation.org website, there is the Mental Wellbeing Association is a subdivision of JWB. And that is where you can find the information specific to the certification. And we are actually pre-enrolling folks right now on to take the certification. It will be ready by March, I believe, of Q1 this year. So we're very excited. We really would love for many people to explore everything that we have to offer through the Mental Wellbeing Association. But that will house the certification, which will be a digital certification and will also include didactic and practical application as well as written information. So it's a full-fledged 20-hour course for fitness professionals.
And can you give them the website again?
Yes, JohnWBrickFoundation.org. And as soon as you click on that, you'll see mentalwellbeingassociation.com.
And where would they find the Moving Mental Health Report?
The Moving Mental Health Report is found on the drop-down menu called Resources on JohnWBrickMentalHealthFoundation.org website.
Brilliant. And I'll make sure to include all of that in the show notes in case you're joining us on the road today and didn't get a chance to write it down. No fret. We'll make sure that that's all there for you. Victor and Lynne Brick, I know that you lead very busy schedules. So truly, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing the time and space with me. You really sparked that inspiration in the room when I had the chance to experience your talk. And the ripple effect is so real. And the fact that the two of you have the bravery to share the vulnerability is why it resonates so well. So thank you for being so open, because that is where the change happens.
Thank you.
I just want to close with thank you for that. I just want to close with our mission is to put a dent in the universe on mental well-being. and we can appreciate and would appreciate and welcome all the help we can get. So anybody listening that wants to become a part of this movement and help us put a dent in the universe for mental well-being, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you.
You've just listened to the All Things Fitness and Wellness podcast, hosted by Chrissy Van. This episode was brought to you by Fitness World, your fitness, your way. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. We have new podcast episodes weekly featuring industry insiders and influencers. Together, we're on a mission for everyone to live a life fit and well.